Hello everybody, this is Llodg, and today I am back, and I'm going to be starting another review series with Bayonetta 3 fast approaching. I thought I would take a look at the first two games in the series and cover 3 when it comes out later this month. Bayonetta originally came out on the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 on October 29, 2009. However, it has been re-released on all major consoles today, so you can play it on any system you want. For this review, I'll be playing the Nintendo Switch version that was released alongside Bayonetta 2 in February of 2018. And if you were wondering, I'm pretty sure all the versions are similar except for the original PS3 version because of the PS3 being so different from the Xbox 360, so it was hard to port over and led to the game not running as well. Unlike my Metroid review series, I have played both of the Bayonetta games before, and both of them actually on the Switch, though I did first get the Steam port, but I was so bad at it for some reason that I stopped. Like, I failed to dodge enemies for a simple mission. I'm so embarrassed at my 15-year-old self that I couldn't do it. Anyway, then in 2018, when it got ported to Switch, I picked up the physical version of 2, which also had download code for Bayonetta 1, which is what I'm playing for this review. And while I did end up finishing both 1 and 2 on the Switch, this game was still fairly hard for me to beat on normal difficulty after like mission 7 where I was fighting a certain boss and I just could not win. So I changed the difficulty to easy and had a much better time, and I didn't even try to on normal, but for this review I'm happy to say that I was actually able to beat the game on normal for the whole way through, even through the tears. And much like my previous reviews, I'll not talk about the spoilers until my spoiler talk section where I'll go into details about the rest of the story and everything, but if you want to go in this game for spoiler free, I'll let you know when I'm switching over. Also, this will be my first of the reviews where in my spoiler talk I'll actually have footage from those sections, so I'll both be talking about and showing some spoilers, but I'll let you know when I start talking about them. And with that, let's get on to the review. And before I go and talking about the start of the story and everything, I think I need to say that this game certainly is not for kids. I mean, there is language and all that, but Bayonetta herself has some suggestive attacks and cutscenes in it. However, I don't really think that crosses a line that goes too far in that direction. I just thought I'd talk about it now because I'm honestly not sure where I'd actually fit it into my review, but I thought I'd let you guys know. We start out the game looking at 2 women falling down the top of a clock tower, then tons of angels come down to fight them. As they are fighting, there's a narrator giving some exposition on the 2 clans of the Umbra Witches and the Lumen Sages. Basically, after some peace, there was a conflict that after many deaths, the witches were able to win the war. However,
their victory was short-lived.
There were lots of witch hunts by the humans and led to all but one of the witches dying out. And then we cut to being in a graveyard with a nun and a guy named Enzo at a funeral for an Eggman. And then as the angels come down to take him to heaven, yep, the nun was Bayonetta the whole time, and we get to see her do what she does best, kill angels. We also see another character named Rodan, who was in the casket, throw Bayonetta lots of guns as she quickly goes through them. It's time to actually play the game. Here I'll talk about the basics of gameplay. So in this game, you have 2 ways of making your main attacks, kicking and punching by pressing either A or X respectively. With these attacks, you can link them together to create different combos, and there are quite a few of them in the game. At the end of the combos, Bayonetta will have a weave attack, where a giant fist or leg made out of hair will come out and attack the enemy. If you'll done either the kick or punch button during an attack, Bayonetta will also shoot her guns at the enemy, and you can just simply shoot your gun by pressing Y, but I honestly didn't use that too often. I thought better just do the combos. Finally, you can dodge attacks, and if you're able to get the time right, you can activate Witch Time, which will slow down everything around you except for Bayonetta, and you can do a number on all the enemies. You can pull off Witch Time for most attacks, but there are certain attacks that won't activate it, even though there are certain times where I will barely dodge an attack, and the game will even slow down to show that you dodged it, but since the attack doesn't have Witch Time linked, it'll just be seen as a regular attack. So as you play the game, you'll recognize which attacks do and don't activate Witch Time. The Witch Time and Weave attacks are honestly some of the most satisfying mechanics in any game that I've played, and those 2 things alone make the combat in this game so much fun. Being able to barely dodge an attack to slow down time and do so much damage to a boss can be so satisfying. After sending all the angels back to heaven at the graveyard and destroying Enzo's car, we start talking about how Bayonetta apparently doesn't know anything about her past. Yep, we have an amnesia plot, and we do see some flashes of stuff that we don't have any idea of what it could be unless we've played this game before. Then Enzo looks in his rearview mirror and...
Huh? What the fuck?
With the second crashing of Enzo's car, we see Bayonetta's Witch Time slow down in action, and we see that mysterious woman in the prologue named John shoot out of the plane and literally be Bayonetta's opposite side of the same coin in this cool shot. Anyway, she kills a lot of the angels, so we know she's awesome, and apparently Bayonetta can barely remember her, but she knows a lot about us. And by the way, this section was the part that I was terrible at. I couldn't do 3 torture attacks since I kept getting hit. I know it's embarrassing, but hey, at least I'm much better at this now. Anyway, before we are able to figure out how this character knows us, she leaves us. And eventually you find some other characters such as Luca, who is hunting Bayonetta for his father's death. And that's all I'll be really talking about considering the story, because I feel like this is a good stopping point for people who do not want to hear about spoilers. So the rest of the game is traveling through different places, trying to figure out our amnesia, and kicking angel butt. And speaking of kicking angel butt, this game really does have some of my favorite combat systems. Being able to lock many different moves, both through the shop and just through story progression, really adds a lot to the gameplay. Though restarting this game with none of my moves you have at the end of the game just feels so weird. The enemies of this game are also super interesting as they're basically Bible accurate angels. I mean, look at some of these guys. I really do like the design of so many of them. Some are obviously better than others, but there are so many of them so it works out. And when you first see a new enemy design for the first time, you get to see this cool introduction cutscene where it shows them off a little bit and even tells you their names. In this game, like many other third-person hack and slashes, there are bosses and mini-bosses, so as you go through the level you will occasionally come across some enemies that are much more fierce than your regular enemies, and to let you know how much more difficult these guys will be, you'll see a health bar in the lower right-hand corner. With these mini-bosses, you'll be able to pull off Witch Time, which feels so good to do because the first time you fight one of these guys, it can seem really hard, but as you learn their moves and attack patterns, you can really make these guys just look foolish. And the first time you see these mini-bosses, you get their introduction cutscenes. This game has a real knack for having the cutscene and then the mini-boss will immediately go to attack you, so if you look away for like a second while the cutscene plays, you'll get hit automatically. Now the bosses. These are some of the most epic and grand bosses I've ever fought in games. Now I'll say right here that I don't really think this game does anything all that special with their bosses. I wasn't blown away by like the game design or anything like that. But so many of them are just so big, and being able to go toe to toe with them is just such a great feeling. Now for many of the bosses, there was a lot of shooting the guns until they attacked to get near you and hopefully they can do an attack. That can be witch timed because so many of the bosses' attacks aren't able to slow down time, which can be a real shame. But when you're able to either do a certain amount of damage or even get to finish them off, you get to do a cool special move called a climax, where Bayonetta will unleash a giant hair monster that will completely rip into the enemy and do lots of damage, or killing them completely. And when this happens, you are able to mash the specific button or move the control stick, similar to how the torches attack works. Usually I would not be able to fill the circles completely and leave like 1 or 2 of the little dots undone, so it can take a little practice and technique to button mash to victory. Now I should probably talk about what the actual levels are like. So for most of the levels, you'll be running through a linear level where at certain points you'll have to fight enemies, like I've said, and even though there isn't a lot of exploring to do in these areas, there are a few collectibles to find, like books if you're a nerd and want to know more about the lore in this game, because there are a ton of things like that to find. Or these birds, and I'll be honest, I don't really know what the birds do, and there are some objects that can be found by breaking like pots and stuff in the level that can give you health or fill up your magic butterfly bar. And I know it's like a magic gauge, but I like calling it a butterfly bar. And with the butterfly gauge, that's basically how you'll be able to do the torture attacks by building up the gauge and you'll be able to attack. But with the bosses, you're not really able to use this gauge for anything. So if you're worried about getting hit just so you can have a full gauge for the bosses, don't worry about it. It literally does nothing for them. Also, this game can be really annoying when you're just hoping for some more health pickups, because once I really needed any more health I could find, and all the pots and benches I would break would just give me the butterflies. And I already had a full butterfly gauge, so it didn't really help me at all. Talking about items, Llodg is actually the item keeper, and in between and around the levels, you can typically find a portal to the gates of hell, where Llodg will let you buy various items, and even more moveset upgrades, which is generally how you'll be getting more moves to your combos. Though like I said before, some moves come with your story progression, and you can buy your regular items like health up and stuff like that, but you can also buy new weapons, to which I honestly didn't use too much. I like the basic moves you get, but it's there for you to try if you want. Also, I didn't realize you get some ones automatically when you start the game. Like, I didn't even realize this weapon menu until the end of the game. There are also costumes you can buy, but once again, I didn't really use these because I'd rather spend my halos on moves, but you do get a few for free, which are the Nintendo exclusive ones. They are of Princess Peach, Princess Daisy, Link, and Samus, and they even have their own weapon classes that would make sense for their characters. But you can also buy basic move upgrades to your health alongside your moveset, and I recommend you do get some up so you can just have enough health for some of these longer levels. While you are traversing levels, you will come across these mini and actual bosses, like I said, with some levels even having more than one actual boss you have to fight, and some levels are just exclusively a boss level. At the end of the level, you will be ranked based on your overall performance in these fights that took place in the battle, like how much damage you took, your combos, and how long it took you to get there. And they add all up to either give you a stone, bronze, silver, gold, or even a platinum statue. But you might have noticed that even if you have fought all the enemies, you are still missing some medals. And that's because you can find these hidden challenges that are scattered through the levels, and I'll be honest, I only found 2 of them, and I'm pretty sure I didn't actually record any gameplay of them. But they have you do different things in order to win, such as only attack enemies with your weave attack, or only being able to damage them when in witch time. And some can be harder than others, so don't worry about too much if you keep failing them. It doesn't really hurt you if you keep retrying. Also, at the end of the levels, you get to play which is a minigame where you are trying to shoot these angels, and each of them have different points for when you kill them. And at first it can be kind of hard to hit them straight on, but sometimes you can get really into a rhythm and take so many of them down. Also, you can use the halos you earn for items, but I just keep the money. And now I'll go a little bit more in depth with that ranking system, because this is actually where I have some issues with the game. And before I get too far deep into it, I want to say that overall I really shouldn't have any issues with the ranking system. I think it makes sense for the things you get ranked on, for the actual medals you get. My main problem lies with how the game will deduct points from you. So as you're playing the game, you're probably taking a lot of damage, right? Well, if you die, and you probably will die, you get this screen. And each time you die, you get one of these red skulls added, which will deduct a lot of points from you. And other games of this genre really won't hurt you too much if you die, they'll just reset you back a checkpoint. And Bayonetta does that too, along with the red skull. I guess it gives you your health back, so it kinda evens out. But that's not even where my real problems lie. So if you're bad, like me, and wanna maybe not die, you'd wanna use items, right? Like replenish your health. Well, those also make you lose points at the end. And I think it's so punishing either way you go about it. I'm not sure how much your deaths versus item usage would really affect your score. Like every time I was about to die, I would use an item, maybe it would make me lose less points overall. But since I lose points, I just legitimately never used any items and saved my money. But hey, you may be thinking, well, it doesn't really matter about my overall rank at the end. If I want a good one, I'll replay the game over and over again when I'm better. And sure, nothing is stopping you from doing that, except for these things called quick time events. So while you're playing the game, there'll be a cutscene. You'll think, oh, let me put down the controller for a sec, and then boom, press the jump button. Oh, you didn't press it in the 1 second it was up? Oh well, I guess you die. Yeah, that's right, you lose your entire life if you didn't press the jump button before it was on the screen. Most games would just take a bit of health and be like, well, you can retry with no real penalty, but no, this game just takes all of it away and says, oh, your perfect run that you worked so hard to do, let me just take it all away from you and retry it again. And remember what button to press, because if you don't, you die again. And guess what? They even do it in the gameplay. Didn't know you're supposed to stay on this falling pillar, even though nothing in the game has told you so far that there'll be a button prompt halfway down the fall? Well, game over. Try again. Yeah, these don't appear as often as the cutscene QuickTime events. Okay, that's pretty much the worst thing I have to talk about this game. Sorry, just had to get that out of my system. There are also some button prompts like to jump across platforms, and even some for just like for some bosses that'll have you do some damage if you don't do them. But since they don't instantly kill you, I'm way more forgiving about them. Now to talk about some things that I won't be angry at all about. There's some really cool times we get to drive a vehicle for either part or the whole entire mission, and it's just fun. Although I think they do go on for a bit too long. Like I get that the only mission in the game that lets me drive a motorcycle down a collapsing highway, but they just seem to go on for so long without any real end for a while until they do just end. I get they had to program in all this stuff and probably didn't want to waste it on like a short section of the mission, but come on, this stuff is just not as fun as the actual fighting, so I just think they go on for a little bit too long. The cutscenes in this game are generally pretty cool. They're kind of split up into 2 different types of cutscenes. These ones which you would actually come to expect with lots of movement and really cool action. and these other ones that use still frames and this like movie real grain set onto them, but still acts like they're the other cutscenes. So yeah, I guess you can tell which one of these I like more. And in these cutscenes there will be characters, and they'll talk quite a bit, but luckily they can be pretty funny and have some great voice actors. And this playthrough of the game, I finally noticed that I knew some of the voice actors from other games and shows, like John sharing a voice actress with Azula from Avatar, or Luca and Yosuke from Persona 4 sharing a voice actor, and I just think that's neat. But I honestly think everyone in the game does a great job with it, so much so that when you start out the game and you hear the title, it can be said by a few different characters. And when I first got the game on Steam for some reason, 15-year-old me was obsessed with going on and off the title screen just to hear all the voices over and over again. And now onto the music, and man, this game's music is so good. Even though I first played the game 4 years ago, this game's soundtrack is just so nostalgic for me. The main battle and boss themes are so good with their orchestral music, and I'm sure you can tell since I've been playing them in the background, but it's really able to heighten the gameplay experience when facing off against these epic bosses. And that's not even going into the climax music for this game, which is a remix version of Fly Me to the Moon. And I really hope it doesn't get copyright claimed because I'm really wanting to include it in this video, but this song is just in my head at all times. So much so that this version was the first version I heard, and that's what I think about when I think about Fly Me to the Moon. I 100% recommend that you listen to this game's soundtrack. You won't be disappointed at all. And yeah, I think that's it for everything I wanted to talk about before I get into the spoiler talk section. This game is really fun, except for the QuickTime events, and I highly recommend you play the game. It's even gotten a physical release on Switch, which is pretty neat. I really love the voice acting, music, gameplay, story, even if it gets a little weird. The bosses are so fun with really cool enemy designs. I do think some of the levels can go on for a bit too long, although that's more me complaining about not being able to use items and trying to get the best score possible. But hey, it can be hard to do. This game is super good, and you're denying yourself of a good time if you don't play it, for at least the great gameplay alone. Okay, and now onto the spoilers. I'll be trying to explain this stuff as nicely as I can, but fair warning, some of the stuff in this game is kind of all over the place, so there will be a lot of jumping around and me guessing what is happening. Like, I know what's happening, but it can be kind of hard for me to explain it in such a short time, so bear with me. Okay, so along Bayonetta's travels of trying to find her memory and everything, she meets this little girl, Cereza, who keeps calling Bayonetta mommy, even though Bayonetta never remembers having a kid at all, and for much of the game you'll have to basically keep her out of trouble and have her stick with you as you go through most of the story with Luca pretty much looking out for her. And after traveling and fighting a lot of bosses, we find out that they want to take Cereza back to their master, and they also talk about the eyes of the world, though they say it in their angel language, which I think is a much cooler touch than having them just speak English. The eyes of the world will basically allow anyone who has them to do whatever they want, like let's say create a giant god or something like that. So after a lot of traveling and fighting giant angels, we are finally able to make it to the city and have a final battle with John. And after that we learn that she was basically trying to help us remember the past and be able to live up to her full potential. But I didn't really get that from the game. I had to read it on the wiki. So, like, I knew she was trying to help us. It was just kind of confusing why her son turned there and not somewhere earlier. But yeah, after that, Cereza is finally captured by Father Baldur, though I'll just call him Father, the final Lumen Sage. And it turns out he is Bayonetta's actual father, because she had an Umber Witch mom and a Lumen Sage dad. And he basically needs little Cereza here to be the left eye of darkness, and it turns out that Cereza is just Bayonetta from the past as a little girl, and that's why she thinks Bayonetta was her mom, and everything else, like having a cat named Cheshire, and Bayonetta calling Luca that. Then here we learn that even though Yosuke thought Bayonetta killed his father, it turns out it was the angels who did it from him getting too close to the truth, and Father just throws Luca out the window to his death. So of course we have to fight Father because of everything he's done. And we win and get to take Cereza back to her own time. And when we get back, Luca is just fine somehow. I mean, from this point on, he's got out of some really bad situations, so it isn't too big of a mystery. But then this happens. Bayonetta gets the left eye from having bringing Cereza back to the past, so despite Father urgently wanting little Cereza for his plan, he is able to simply use Bayonetta herself because of her act. Father is now able to enact his plan and use both himself and Bayonetta, and is able to resurrect Jubilius, who will inhabit this giant stone statue as a body. Father goes into the right eye and Bayonetta into the left, thus resurrecting Jubilius. And I just have to talk about this, and if you haven't played Devil May Cry 4 yet, which I also highly recommend you do, skip this part of the video. I'll put a PNG of Virgil up so you know how long I'm talking about it, because I'm going to spoil some in-game stuff for DMC4. So this boss is pretty much the exact same as DMC4's Savior boss, right? It needs two people that are aligned with good and evil, Kyrie and Nero, against Father and Bayonetta. It's a god made up of stone, and the evil character is able to get out midway through. Like, these games just came out a year apart, so did Bayonetta just straight up steal this idea from DMC4? Probably not, but it's weird that these similar games ended up with such a similar ending to their plots, right? If I had a nickel for every time a character action game's final boss was a statue of a god that was made up with the souls of both someone aligned with heaven and hell, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that happened twice, right? Okay, that's the end of me comparing DMC4 to Bayonetta. When I played DMC4 for the first time last year, I was just so shocked that these games have similar final bosses, and I'll probably bring this up again when I hopefully review the Devil May Cry games. Okay, that's enough of Virgil on the screen. So with Jubilias resurrected, all hope seems to be lost for our heroes. They even rocketed the tower into space for their plan, for some reason. If only there was someone super cool enough to stop it.
Thank God. There's still time.
Well, it's a good thing that John is just so cool. And here we actually get to play as John, riding your motorcycle up the rocket tower to get to Bayonetta. And I remember this section of John being longer, but you play as her for like 3 minutes, and most of it's just riding a motorcycle, but oh well. And here we're able to break Bayonetta out of the eye, and while Jubilias is recreating the universe with John and Bayonetta separate again, Father's just straight up blinked to death. And here is the final boss of the game, Jubilias. And once again, as Bayonetta, we have to fight this giant god, and it's honestly a pretty cool section. We have to hit her arms, strands of hair pieces, and do a lot of damage for certain sections. We also get to go through these different areas that we can jump to do damage to her. To make this fight feel even more epic than it already is, all of Bayonetta's attacks are also weave attacks, which are the best feeling attacks out of the game. Also for this fight, I figured out how to really switch weapons, so you get to see some of them here. And I just gotta say, I really love Jubilias' design as a boss. It feels so different from all the other boss designs that we fought against, since they are more like, not stone. But yeah, even as her body gets degraded from our fight, I just think she looks so cool. But after doing loads of damage to her, we are able to begin the climax, and unlike most of the bosses, you actually have to do something with this one. You have to run up your hair, and after getting hit once and having to go back up again, we finally make it to her head and finally deal the killing blows and... With both Bayonetta and John's powers combined, we are able to unleash a being so powerful that we punch Jubilias all the way and have to guide her into the sun. Also dodge these plants in the way, even though they seem like they could be used to like do a combo and hurt her more. It gives you a game over, so don't do that. So just throw her directly into the sun, and that's the game. Now we see all who worked so hard on this wonderful game. Yeah, John was able to make it here by using the motorcycle and tells us we need to completely destroy the statue to save the world. And here you basically destroy everything as fast as you can. And I really like the scenes that really help set up Bayonetta and John's relationship. Though I guess the eye scene did that too, but this is just so cool. And after a lot of destroying rock, we won. But at what cost? Bayonetta is in the grave and we are having a funeral for her. You really think they killed Bayonetta just like that? With a nice callback to the start, this is the end of Bayonetta. You even get to fight during different times in the campaign during the credits, and it ends with a really cool dance scene and a final image that thanks you for playing. And yeah, I thought I'd put up all my medals for the game just so you can see how they did. I know some of them get real bad, but I didn't use any healing candy, so what can you do? Once again, you can move it to easy if you want to just have little challenges, but it's always fun to challenge yourself, and you replay the game over and over again with different weapons to get a better score. And yeah, this is the game's story. And yeah, this game's story can get a little crazy, but I have to say, I really enjoyed it. Once again, I highly recommend this game. It's so fun. It has some really cool designs for the characters, wonderful gameplay, great music. I mean, what else could you ask for? I took so long to actually do this review that it's less than a month until Bayonetta 3 will come out, and this game finally got a physical release on Switch. So yeah, I'm sorry for the long wait, but I really hope you play this game, no matter what it's on. The original 360, Wii U, PS4, Xbox, PC, Switch. Just not the PS3 release, please. And I'll see you guys again when I review Bayonetta 2. I hope you enjoyed the video, have a good day, and goodbye!